We're going to exceed the levels of economic freedom of Australia, New Zealand, and Switzerland. We are undoubtedly going to be the freest country in the world.
Hi, it's Mike and Alan once again with the Gold Silver Show. Alan has a great presentation for us, so Alan, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, today I wanted to talk about Argentina. I was inspired by a comment from one of our viewers on a recent video. Can we get an update of Argentina? Absolutely. Yes, you can. This is it. Not only because of your comment, but also because it is the 1-year anniversary of Javier Milei taking office. So back on December 10th, 2023, Milei took office. And now that we're past December 10th of 2024, we can give a 1-year update and see how things have taken shape. I want to talk about inflation. I want to talk about government spending, poverty, and that overall vibe of economic freedom, which can be difficult to measure. So I want to look at the Economic Freedom of the World annual report. So 2024 has come out. However, they use old data because, as you can imagine, it takes a lot of time to gather all the data from all the different countries around the world, compile it and analyze it and publish it. So the 2024 report uses 2022 data. However, I will show you something in just a second. They do have a special section for Argentina. So with the most recent data, 2022, just to give you guys a sense, the 10 highest scoring nations are Hong Kong, Singapore, Switzerland, New Zealand, United States, Denmark, Ireland, Canada, Australia, and Luxembourg. So those are the top 10 in terms of economic freedom.
And it looks like the United States has risen back up to number 5. I believe we were number 6 last year. And for a while, right after the Patriot Act was passed, we dropped to number 12. And the thing that is dangerous about that, the higher you score here, the happier your population is and the longer they live. And the poorest people in the highest rated countries are actually, I don't know if you can call it wealthier, but they're better off than the poor people in the socialistic countries that are trying to redistribute all the wealth and take care of everybody. They just drag everybody down to the bottom instead of lifting people up to the top. So, yeah. Yes, so Argentina, go ahead, continue on with what you were saying.
Yeah, the 10 lowest rated countries, and by the way, this is going back to 2022. The 10 lowest rated countries are Yemen, Libya, Iran, Argentina, Myanmar, Algeria, Syria, Sudan, Zimbabwe, and Venezuela.
To have Argentina grouped with Zimbabwe and Venezuela is really something. It just shows what socialistic leadership can do to a country.
Yeah, and Argentina's been near the bottom of the list for several years in a row. So that isn't a recent phenomenon. And yes, this is absolutely crushing to every kind of outcome you can imagine: health outcomes, happiness, wealth, just about everything. Yeah.
So, I've been downloading these now for almost 20 years. Almost every year, I download the report and go through it. Can you scroll down a couple of pages and show people the categories that are rated? This next page is good. So they split all of the countries. I think it's 160 some countries now into 4 quartiles. And the people in this sort of turquoise, light blue top quartile live, I think it's almost 18 years longer than the ones in the bottom quartile. And this is all. What's amazing is you put numbers in a spreadsheet and you hit sort. And when you do, it predicts how long you're going to live by the economic system that you're living under. Now, I want to point out to people the categories. So the size of government, that's compared to like the GDP of the country. And that is easy. That's a hard number that you can get from the countries that produce reliable economic data. Legal system and property rights. This is a little bit subjective. So somebody has to go through all of the laws and what is happening with the courts to try to determine, Are the courts corrupt? Is it part of the political system instead of a separate legal system? Sound money, that is a hard number. So what they're talking about, sound currency, is how much are they expanding the currency supply? How loose are they with credit? Freedom to trade internationally, very, very important. This is one concern that I have with Trump's tariffs, for instance, because tariffs limit, if we limit this, we're limiting the potential lifespans of our citizens. The trading internationally prevents war. Before World War II could happen, Germany had to become an autarky where they are completely independent from everybody else so that they could declare war on everybody else and still have a functioning economy. We rely on China a lot. China relies on us. If we completely, and people also forget tariffs. When you introduce tariffs, they're going, oh yeah, tax the Chinese. We can't tax the Chinese. It's you, the retail purchaser, the consumer, that pays the tax. If we have 100% tariffs on Chinese manufactured goods, LG TVs double in price. At our end, China is still selling them for the same amount, and it slows down their sales, but it ultimately hurts the American consumer, and it makes it possible to. The more you limit international trade, the more likely war becomes. And so, we've seen what has happened with all of the sanctions against Russia. There's no more Russian trade, but before, there was more of a reason that war shouldn't or couldn't happen. And now there's less of a reason. And so anyway, so what are the last ones here? Can you zoom up on that, Dan? Okay, so regulation. Now this is split into a couple of categories, subcategories, 3 subcategories. Regulation of small business is the most important one. This has banking regulation, regulation of the markets, and then regulation of business. But if you over-regulate small business, because I've seen regulation in business just go up and up and up every year. In fact, later today, I'm going to spend a whole bunch of time filing some reports for the government on every. I've got several LLCs and an S corp, and every one of those you have to disclose now. All of the information of the owners and so on. But okay, slow down and go through these. Go back to the top of these, because this is interesting and I want everybody to see this. So per capita income in all countries, and you can see the more the red countries and the orange countries, that's where the government is trying to take care of everybody and trying to run everything. And so the per capita income, as you become freer and freer, goes up and up and up. And so what we want is as much freedom and as little regulation as possible if you want to live the longest.
Yes,
and be the happiest.
That's the chart I was trying to find, is life expectancy, but I got to go through some of the income ones and so forth to get there.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Go income per capita. Next one. Yeah. So
economic freedom, income per capita, averaged over quartile. Okay, so just this color coded.
And this is purchasing power parity. So it's adjusted so that they're basically trying to measure the equal things. And so as a country tries to take care of everyone and tries to redistribute all of the wealth, and the government starts running everything, it just drags everybody down to the bottom and destroys all private businesses, and just makes it very difficult for anybody to create a job, to create prosperity. Go down to the next chart. Economic freedom and income of the lowest 10%. Okay, so it's almost equal with the the most free countries and the least free countries. Why? Because everybody is in the lowest 10% in the red country. That's the entire population. I mean, it is measuring 10%, but just above that 10% is the other 88% of the country. And then there's the 2% of all of the political class that gets to ride around in limousines and gets to live in all of the confiscated mansions and so on from the people that were running business, producing prosperity and creating employment. Go down to the next chart.
Yeah, real quick, let me just say on this one, I think this sort of dispels the myth that in a more socialist country, that the poor would have a greater percentage of the income that's earned.
Right.
So like the lowest 10% would earn closer to 10% of the total income, right? If everyone's earning the same amount of income, the poorest 10% are earning 10% and the richest 10% are earning 10%. But this really debunks that myth that it's kind of unrelated to how much economic freedom you have. The poorest 10% are only going to earn about 2.5% of the income, just by the natural bell curve of wealth. So anyways.
Yeah, there's one other thing that I want to say about a lot of people will point to the Scandinavian countries, Sweden and such, and say that socialism works for them. They're not. Those people that say that do not understand the definition of socialism. These are market economies. In fact, in many aspects on this report, they measure much more freely than we do in the United States. And so I believe it was the former prime minister of Sweden, or I can't remember who it was exactly, had to come out and say, stop calling us a socialist country. We are not. We are a free market capitalist country with social programs layered on top of it. And this chart proves that those social programs help to slow the economy, and they do not lift the poorest 10% out of poverty. So anyway, go on with the next chart.
Okay. Economic freedom and income threshold of the poorest 10%.
Okay.
So yeah, basically the poorest 10% earn more in the freer countries. No surprise.
Yes, right. Yeah. Next chart.
Life expectancy. This is the one I was trying to get to. Yeah. When you're more free, you live longer.
16 years. Huh. Wow. Amazing. And this just shows that the damage government can do. So show infant mortality.
Yeah. Infant mortality.
Wow. So the more a government, this is like when you vote to expand government, you're voting to murder babies. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it that way. But basically, look at this chart. This is data. And this is just a choice of the voters or some dictator taking over a country. And when you have the country being run at the whim of a politician or a military leader, or you have voted to share everything, the babies don't survive. And then the ones that do survive don't live nearly as long. Okay. Go ahead and let's see if there's any more charts after this. Aha.
Economic freedom and poverty. So people, which they define as living on less than $2.15 per day.
Adjusted for purchasing power parity, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah,
1% of the most free quartile, and nearly a third of people in the oppressed countries.
Yeah. That chart tells it all. That tells everything. So, okay. And the,
life satisfaction.
So this is a measure. This is a happiness index.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And in the poor countries, 5 out of 10. That's actually higher than I would have expected, but maybe you get used to it. I don't know. And then in the free countries, 6.8, almost a 7 out of 10. So.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
So yes. So
there's more. Go. Let's just go to that last page. Sorry.
Okay. Percent of children working.
Wow, child labor. Wow. Mm-hmm. And People will try to demonize the companies employing third world child labor. I think Nike or something was a target years ago, employing people in Africa. But what are the alternatives? When you give jobs to children or to working mothers, all of that, if you take that job away, like the people that were trying to do good morally and doing these protests and boycotting the companies that were employing children, those children lost their jobs and became prostitutes and drug dealers instead of working. And so you have to look at, Bastiat said there that you have to try to see the unforeseen. There are economic consequences that you can see, and those which you cannot see, and the ones that come a little bit down the road. Usually, if you make a bad economic decision, that will really impact several years down the road. Anyway, what's the chart below that? Literacy rates. Wow, they're going into a lot more detail than they used to. So, yeah. And what's down below that?
Environmental performance.
Yeah. So you live in a cleaner environment, you're happier, you live longer. Just get government out of the way. Tolerance. Wow. Whoa. Huh. Is there more? Wow.
Non-corruption.
Amazing. They've added all of these different categories recently. These weren't in the old reports. What's the next one? That's it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for running me through that. That is absolutely amazing. And the thing is, a little bit of this is subjective, where you have to try to pick a number to put in that cell in the spreadsheet. But most of it is pretty hard data that they can enter, and then they hit sort, and this happens. It's amazing. It is, and these go, when they first started this back in the mid 60s, there were only 16 countries producing reliable economic data. And now we have, go back to the chart for a second, Dan. Scroll up to the list of the quartiles. And what is the last country on there? I think it's 163 countries. Keep on going. And
165.
165. 165 countries. And they do this every single year. And I always use this. This is the Fraser Institute up in Canada, which is more moderate. But, the Heritage Foundation comes to the exact same conclusions as this. I don't cite them because there's a bunch of people will say, oh, that's just a conservative think tank, and they dismiss it. This is a much more moderate group of people up in Canada producing this data. It's very, very well done. And they've been doing it, like I said, since the mid 60s. And I want to commend them. If there's anybody up there from the Fraser Institute watching, thank you so much for the work that you do.
Yes, I will echo that. This is fantastic. It's amazing. So great to have access to this.
Yeah.
And I think
Venezuela on the red part of the chart. Can you zoom up on that, Dan? Argentina, I mean. There it is. Wow.
Yeah. 159 out of 165.
Unbelievable. And so this was just 2 years ago that they were at 159. Okay, let's keep on going in your presentation. I'm sorry I slowed it down so much.
It's all good. It's all good. So anyways, I thought it was very interesting in the most recent publication. In the table of contents, there's only 3 chapters. One of them is kind of what we just went through. And one of them is lessons for Argentina. So they have an entire chapter specifically on Argentina because obviously at the time this was published, they know Javier Milei is in office. It's just going to be, another year, maybe 2 years before they can gather all the data and compile, all the charts of what we just saw.
Well, I'm sure Javier has them working overtime.
Yes, exactly. So before we have, the updated charts from the Fraser Institute, we have a bunch of, early data from Argentina itself and from other sources. And I wanted to go through that because it has been a pretty profound transformation. And there was a Twitter thread by a gentleman, Fernando Chao Zhang, that I thought was pretty helpful. So I pulled out a handful of tweets from his thread. And he says, when Milei took office in December 2023, Argentina was imploding. Inflation in the first half of December was at 7,500% annualized.
Wow, 7,500%. Wow.
Yeah. So if you go to the grocery store and you spend $100, imagine 1 year later, instead of $100 to buy your groceries, it's 76 times that. So it's $7,600 to buy the same groceries. $7,600. That's crazy. That's the pace that Argentina was on.
Yeah, and that's when everybody tries their best not to use the Argentine peso for anything.
Yes, exactly. Their GDP was down 15% over the previous decade. Central bank reserves were at negative $12 billion. So hard to call those reserves when they're negative. Nearly 50% of the country was in poverty.
Actually, it was more than 50%, I believe. So
yeah, the official numbers were below 50%, but Milei confesses in his podcast interview that he found out that the government, when he took office, wasn't recording those numbers accurately. So as he started to record them accurately, it actually looked like the poverty rate went up for the first half of the year, and then as his policies took effect, the poverty rate came down. And I'm going to give you some numbers.
Okay.
In just a second.
I think it was something like 54%, and it dropped to around 48% or something like that.
Yep, something in the 50s to something in the 40s. Yeah, so we'll get there in just a second. Milei understood something profound about government spending. The true tax burden isn't what citizens pay in taxes. It's the total size of the state apparatus itself. Every peso spent by government is a peso taken from productive citizens. So
there's one thing I want to say here: productive citizens. The way the tax structure is progressive tax structure that punishes the producers of prosperity, and it rewards anybody that just consumes prosperity without really producing. And one of the things that people don't understand is that the matching taxes that businesses have to pay. I forgot what it's called now, but when you hire somebody, if that's a minimum wage worker and they're barely paying any tax at all, they don't realize that that the business is paying about 15% on their behalf. So the amount of taxes that the working poor actually pay is actually very high, but it's hidden. And then the businesses are punished for hiring people. The businesses are punished when they make a profit. I mean, I live in Puerto Rico because in California, when I had, I worked for 40 years to try and build, starting businesses, failing, closing some. One of them went bankrupt. And then I had one that really hit. And California pretty much 39.6 federal. And then you add 12.3 in California and another 1% mental health tax. And then there's another percent. It's like 14. So there was a couple of years where I paid more than 50% of my income. And then on top of that, you've got and I would have created more jobs. That's what I would have done with it. Expand more, or sold had a lower profit margin and sold more product to more people at a lower price. because the way somebody does well in life, if you're doing it fairly and you're not a criminal, basically, is to serve as many people as possible. And you have to do that with either a better price or a better product, or preferably both.
Absolutely. There's only two ways to build a fortune: making it and taking it.
Yep.
So if you're not taking it from somebody, you got to make it the hard way, the way you just described, by helping people, help as many as you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Javier Milei knows that. And so he tried to get the state out of everyone's business. He eliminated entire categories of spending. He stopped all discretionary transfers to provinces. He halted public works projects. And a lot of people would say, oh, no, you can't stop public works. I mean, that's good for the public, right? It not only creates jobs, but it creates services that the public can use. But as we just saw in the Economic Freedom of the World report, the more government you have, the more oppressed people are, the less happy, the less wealthy, the less longer they live, the more problems they have. So Milei just went the other direction. He said, let people keep their money and invest it the way they want.
Yeah.
He removed economic subsidies. He cut out social program intermediaries who were stealing half the funds. He described this in detail in the podcast. So if anyone wants more detail, they should check it out. But this is basically corruption, where you hire people to distribute tax money to social programs, but those people are oftentimes corrupt, and they put it in their own pockets, right? They don't actually give it to the people who need help. And he said this was a massive problem, and so he just stopped it.
Yeah, I was in a cab, and it was just impossible to get. This was several years ago when I lived in San Juan. It was impossible to get home. I could have gotten out and walked in 3 minutes, but it took 45 minutes to go those last 2 blocks because they had everything down to just a single lane, because they were replacing the sidewalks, and they were replacing some of the nicest sidewalks in San Juan that were they were perfect, and they were replacing them. And I'm starting to, I start saying something to the cab driver, and he goes, yeah, well, it's probably a politician's cousin that's got this contract, and they've got to find some place to spend the money.
Yep.
So, and all you had to do was just turn the corner, walk down the side street, and they've got metal gratings around the roots of trees that stick up and could impale you. I mean, there's dangerous booby traps, broken sidewalks and stuff, just 50 feet away from where they're replacing some of the finest sidewalks in Puerto Rico. So anyway, so let's move on.
All right. So yeah, last thing here. In January, his first month, he achieved the impossible. For the first time in 113 years, actually 123 years, Argentina achieved true fiscal balance. The other 10 years without a deficit, they weren't paying their debt. So they defaulted on their obligations in order to not run a deficit historically.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is the first time in 123 years that there was a true fiscal balance without defaulting. Milei executed the largest fiscal adjustment in Argentina's history, 15 points of GDP in just 6 months. Wow. That's incredible.
Amazing.
The results were unprecedented.
Chainsaw.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what he talked about, was just taking a chainsaw to all these government agencies and stuff and cutting off the limbs.
Yeah. Afuera, right?
Yeah.
Just getting them all out. So yeah, he achieved this with minimal political support, just 15% of representatives, 10% of senators, and importantly,
I want to say one thing here.
Yeah.
Those representatives and senators that did not support him should be ashamed of themselves now that they see the results, what it did for the population. The entire country is being lifted out of poverty right now, and 85% of representatives did not want that to happen. We're trying to prevent it. And 90% of senators did not want that to happen and tried to prevent it. And so they should truly be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah. So who knows? It could be an issue of corruption, could be ignorance, could be culture, could be a combination. But hopefully these numbers just accelerate, in the second year, third year, and so forth.
Right. Elections will replace a lot of the people that this 15% and 10%. I will bet that they get reelected, and a whole lot of the other representatives and senators down there are going to find themselves unemployed.
Yeah, they'll have to go to the private sector. Oh no.
Yeah, and learn how to earn a living.
Yes. So yeah, lastly here. So how did Milei do this? Well, he didn't trigger hyperinflation, which is something that leaders often do. He didn't use price controls, and he didn't have a fixed exchange rate. So that's, revolutionary, you might say, or you might say this is what has always worked throughout history. So yeah. So Milei did it through pure fiscal discipline. So there's another tweet here that kind of summarizes everything. Argentina, 1 year of Milei. Inflation slashed from 25.5% monthly, right, which we said was 7,500% annually, to 2.7%. Poverty rate demolished from 54% to about 41%. That's an expected number.
That's what I was talking about earlier. Yes.
Yeah, huge reduction. So, by the way, I looked it up. The population of Argentina is about 45 million people. So if you rescue 10% of them from poverty, that's 4.5 million people rescued from poverty in a year. 4.5 million people. That's unbelievable. I mean,
because of free market capitalism. Capitalism is one of the best things ever invented, and we just need to unleash it. So go ahead.
Yeah. From 2.7% primary deficit to 1.7% surplus. By the way, that's this chart here. The previous year, 2023, a 2.7% deficit, now up at a 1.7% surplus. And that's an October number, so this actually could go up by the time they get the December number. Dollar blue and official rate converging. So dollar blue is basically the black market for dollars, which is the unofficial exchange rate. And then when you compare that to the official exchange rate, there's a gap because people know that a dollar is more valuable than the government says it is. A US dollar is more valuable relative to the Argentine peso.
Right. And so the government lying just to try and convince people, and everybody sees right through it anyway. But they have this phony baloney exchange rate that isn't real.
Exactly. And when those two rates converge in any country, that basically means that the people are starting to believe the government in the sense that of, what's a fair exchange rate? They say, okay, the official rate is fair because we trust the government, we trust their calculation, and we trust, the economics that we're experiencing on the ground.
It means that the free market in foreign currency exchange is working.
Yeah,
that's what it means. Yeah,
exactly. Well, yeah. So even when there's a black market, that's kind of the free market as well on its own.
It is,
but yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And anyways, so the country risk has been obliterated. Dollar deposits and savings are soaring. Real wages are rising. And he concludes here, the journey from the path to Venezuela with socialism to the path to prosperity with Milei is truly remarkable.
And it is.
It is. So instead of becoming less and less free economically and heading the way of Venezuela, the lowest on the chart of the entire world, Argentina is moving the other direction. It's ascending the ranks. And
when he was elected, I said that, congratulations. This is the first time since the founding of the United States of America that we've done an experiment in classic liberalism. I'm a libertarian, and this is what a libertarian does. Milei is basically, he calls himself an anarcho-libertarian, and people confuse the word anarchy with chaos. And it's not. It just means without leaders, taking responsibility for your own life. You don't need somebody else to tell you how to live your life responsibly. And so, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I got one more tweet here, and then I want to play a clip, actually, of Javier Milei himself. So Argentina ends the deficit for the first time in 123 years. And here's a quote from him in one of his recent speeches. The deficit was the root of all our evils. Without the deficit, there's no debt, there's no emission, there's no inflation. Today, we have a sustained fiscal surplus, free of default for the first time in 123 years. This historic achievement came from the greatest adjustment in history and reducing monetary emission to zero. A year ago, a degenerate, his predecessor, printed 13% of GDP to win an election, fueling inflation. Today, monetary emission is a thing of the past.
Hooray for him. I mean,
Yeah.
I knew that if he did all the things he was talking about. So this is an economist. This is a Austrian economist. He's not from us, from Austria, but it's the Ludwig von Mises type of economics here. And Austrian economics is the only one. Keynesian economics is just a lie. It's wishful thinking. And I mean, John Maynard Keynes was brilliant, but he was wrong.
Yep. Can't argue with that.
That's what's really dangerous, is for somebody brilliant to be wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, the last thing I want to have here is a clip from a recent podcast that Milei did with Lex Friedman. And funny enough, a portion of the clip, or a portion of the podcast, Milei actually talks about his economic background and the books that he read and the different economists that he learned from. So for anyone interested, I definitely recommend you check it out. He rattles off maybe 10 economists that were very influential in his thinking. But here I have a clip that's less than a minute, and it's about deregulation and the effects that Milei's policies have had on Argentina in the past year, and what his vision is for the country moving forward. So take a listen.
Our deregulation agenda continues daily, and we still have 3,200 structural reforms pending. This will ultimately make Argentina the freest country in the world. Moreover, to have a sense of magnitude, the reforms that we already have made with the Executive Order 7023 and with the basis law, we have actually jumped 90 places in terms of economic freedom. What this means is that today, Argentina has institutions similar to those of Germany, France, Italy, and we obviously want this to continue. And let's say we are going to surpass, no doubt, the levels of economic freedom that Ireland reached in its best moment. And not only that, we're going to exceed the levels of economic freedom of Australia, New Zealand, and Switzerland. We are undoubtedly going to be the freest country in the world.
I've just got to say, wow. First of all, going up 90 points. Now, I would imagine, since the economic freedom of the world, since the Fraser Institute is not done calculating this, we haven't checked Heritage Foundation. Maybe he's referencing that, but I doubt it. Maybe they are just calculating their own numbers and sort of inserting them in those cells and taking a guess. They've come up that many places, but basically, about half. That is absolutely amazing. And this thing, we are undoubtedly going to be the freest country in the world. I'm going to tell you a little secret right now. I was getting very, very worried about the United States of America. And I was, before the elections, I was planning on going down to Argentina and checking it out and possibly living there. So it was that extreme. We were having a lot of censorship and government control that scared me to death.
Yes. Well, I agree. I shared some of the same sentiments, although I was not thinking about moving to Argentina. Definitely, attracted to its policies.
Think about the opportunity that exists there right now. They are coming out of the wreckage of socialism, being the fifth least economically free country in the world, and they're ascending like this. So think of what businesses, real estate, all of the opportunity that exists down there now that didn't, and the opportunity is caused by the wreckage of socialism, by all of those politicians that were taking advantage, politicians get paid from public funds. So, I mean, even teachers, if it's a school that is funded by the state, it's coming out of your taxes. And so one of the things about government is that once you've paid your taxes, all those politicians think that that currency is theirs to spend any way that they want. And that is so, so wrong. So anything else?
Yeah, I just love his message here. We are undoubtedly going to be
Yeah.
the freest country in the world. I mean, it's so refreshing to hear a leader talk like that. The presidents of the United States, throughout my lifetime, haven't really had a vision like that resonated with me. I mean, you've got these kind of slogans like "Make America Great Again," which is not terrible, but what does that really mean? That could mean a lot of different things. Build back better. Okay, hope and change. I mean, there's all these different slogans that don't really resonate with me, but we are undoubtedly going to be the freest country in the world. Okay, sign me up. That
Yes.
resonates with me.
Exactly. Okay, I want to thank everybody for watching, and there's going to be a part 2 to this video, so I want you to watch that as well. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you later, Alan, and everybody else. Thanks.